Hello, listeners. This is Kat. Welcome back to Put Your Hands Up Podfics. This will be the continuation of All For You. This will be part 22, day 40. Izuku's intestines perforated. He was whisked away for emergency surgery. Saneki-san said to prepare for the worst. Hizashi went to the meeting anyway. All Might's leg bounced impatiently under the table as they waited. The clacking of laptop keyboards grated at his nerves. He tapped his pen against the table. Nezu sipped loudly on his tea. All For One was late. He'd never been late. What had he done now? Did something happen? The door to the conference room burst open, banging against the other wall as All For One stalked in and slammed his ever-present coffee cup onto the table. Ito followed in quietly after, eyeing the supervillain with concern. He could see why. He'd shown up without his suit coat, and with his sleeves rolled up to his elbows. His hair was mussed and tangled, and there were dark bags underneath the blood-red eyes that glared out at them. He looked like shit. Again. "Give me that," All For One snapped, grabbing paper straight out of Nezu's paws. "You seem rather short today, All For One," Nezu commented mildly. All For One's nostrils flared, and he glared up from the forms. "Today is not the day to try my patience," he rumbled, voice low and threatening like a distant thunderstorm. Nezu held up his paws in surrender, and All For One huffed. "Yard." "We have already agreed to that," Nezu said. All For One jotted something down. "Close to this hospital." "That is within reason." More scratching of the pen. "Visitors." "What kind of visitors?" Sir Night-Eye asked. All For One's lip curled, but he replied anyway. "Family friends." Sir Night-Eye closed his mouth, looking unsure. All For One's grip tightened on the pen. "My late wife's friends." "That is acceptable," Nezu said. "I still own the apartment and all its contents, and I want to be able to visit it." "With supervision," Nezu countered. All For One kept writing, signed it, pushed it across the table, then started on the next one. All Might grabbed the paper, looking it over. "You're agreeing to an HPSC-monitored location?" he asked, disbelieving. The HPSC representatives perked up. "Yes," All For One said shortly, not even looking up from the form he was writing on. "Why?" All Might asked warily. "I want to get this over with," All For One snapped, sliding another paper across the table. It was the paper containing All Might's own terms, frequent check-ins with no warning, supervision, and rights to custody should All For One lose it. There was a note there, about custody first going to a family called the Bakugos, and that they should reference Inko Midoriya's will regarding that, but that was all. He had expected more of a fight, but the signature at the bottom said everything. All Might passed the paper to Night-Eye, as another form slid across the table. Over the course of 2 short hours, All For One agreed to a tracker, giving over his blood money and all the information he had on the villain underground, monitoring his quirk levels, and an escort whenever he left secure housing, prior approval to all movement outside secure housing, beyond medical emergencies, and repatriation of quirks to those who were alive and wanted them back. The only points of contention were his civilian money and the use of his various quirks. Most of his fortune was forfeit, but he'd been smart enough to keep some of his money squeaky clean. It was hard to argue that buying items and sticking them in a warehouse for a century until they were mint-condition antiques was anything illegal. The quirks, however, caused a bit more of an issue. "You should not be able to use any stolen quirks," an HPSC representative protested. "With your level of criminal activity, you—" "Shut your blabbering mouth for half a second and listen to me," All For One sighed, rubbing his temples. "This is, as Nezu so kindly put it, a voluntary retirement. I'm not going to prison, and will never see a courtroom, because if I did, he turned to glare at All Might, failure to stop me, and he turned to glare at the HPSC representatives, failure to even know of me until a few decades ago would become public knowledge. So would Izuku. I think I can assume that none of us want that. So for the sake of our mutually assured public embarrassment, I will be subject to the same quirk laws as anyone else with a quirk of any notable strength, on private property only, in a non-destructive manner, and, per other terms of the agreement, under your supervision. So you can come bursting in and interrupt my day whenever I telekinetically grab something off of the top shelf." Silence fell. "You have telekinesis?" Night-Eye asked. "Of course I do. It is absurdly common," All For One hissed. Now, do we have an understanding?" "I think that is quite reasonable," Nezu said, his eternal smile unchanging. After a moment, heads nodded around the table. Reluctantly, All Might nodded as well. "Good," All for One snapped. "Now, give me that form." As All for One scribbled down his terms, his head down and his coffee sitting neglected next to him, Toshinori looked down at the form All for One had signed regarding information. The paper simply had a signature on it, and the word "all" underlined and circled. He hadn't even fought the request. He looked at the paper for all of 30 seconds before signing, pushing it away and reaching for the next one. After more than a month of trying to get All for One to agree to anything reasonable, here he was making concessions left and right. "Why are you doing this?" Toshinori asked, looking up from the paper. "I want to get this over with," All for One repeated, not even looking up. "No," Toshinori said. All for One's pen stopped, and his eyes slowly lifted. "What's the real reason?" All for One huffed, going back to writing. "Izuku is in surgery again." "Oh, how dreadful," Nezu said. "We hope for his swift recovery." All for One snorted, but said nothing. While it rubbed Toshinori the wrong way that he would be so doubtful about their care for an infant, he couldn't really blame him. "What for?" Toshinori asked, trying not to give in to the urge to look at his thumb. "His heart?" "NEC." Nezu made an unhappy noise. All for One twitched. Toshinori looked between the two. "What?" he started. "Look it up." Toshinori's jaw shut with a click, but he pulled out his phone. He quickly wished he hadn't. A horrid thought occurred to him. All for One was signing so many of these papers. Izuku was very ill with this monster of a disease. He couldn't help but remember that Nezu had mentioned it was better to wait than negotiate when All for One was compromised. "How—" Toshinori started. All for One glared at him again. The look in his eyes made ice run down his spine. He couldn't believe he was asking this, but he had to know. "How are you doing?" Toshinori asked. The pen in All for One's hand cracked. "My 1-month-old son's organs are rotting inside his body. He's in surgery again, and instead of waiting to find out if he lives, I'm stuck here with you lot. How do you think I'm doing, Yagi?" Toshinori recoiled. "How do you know my name?" All for One gave him a dead-eyed look and jabbed his finger at the top of the paper. "Well," Toshinori spluttered, "what I meant to ask was if you should even be here. I don't want to be making deals with a compromised villain because you might not stick to them." "Shut up," All for One snapped. "I will stick to them. I just want to get this over with so I can—" All for One's voice cracked. "So I can make arrangements for both Inko and Izuku. I'm sure there's space near Yuichi," he finished with a mumble. Toshinori really wished he hadn't asked, or looked up NEC, or thought about how small a coffin would have to be for a baby that young. He really wished he didn't care. But he did. Silence fell again. Toshinori didn't dare break it. All for One slid the last paper across the table. Nezu grabbed it, looking at them all with a sparkle in his beady black eyes. "Do I have custody now?" All for One asked, his voice exhausted as he stared at the blank, empty table. The shiny wood reflected his miserable face. Nezu opened his mouth to presumably say yes, and Toshinori set aside his phone to grab the sponsor forms he would need to sign soon. "No." A silence so thick it was suffocating fell over the room. Toshinori looked up, eyes wide. It was one of the HPSC representatives. "What?" All for One hissed. "We will need to discuss these terms with the head of the HPSC. You can expect an answer within 2 weeks," the representative said. "My son is in a surgery he may not live through right now, and you were telling me I have to wait 2 weeks to find out if I get to keep custody?" All for One snapped. The representative shrugged callously. "It's procedure, All for One. Nothing I can do about it." All for One glared at the HPSC representative, a look of such intense hatred on his face it sent shivers down Toshinori's spine. He stood up, hands slamming against the table as his chair spun into the wall. "Fuck you," he spat. "Rot in hell." He slammed the door behind him as he left. The walls rattled with the force of it. His coffee toppled over. One of the representatives sniffed disdainfully. "Well, That was unwarranted. Nezu hummed, turning his tea around in his paws. I'm inclined to disagree. Normally, Toshinori would have agreed with the representatives wholeheartedly. All he would have seen was an angry villain getting foiled. But now, as he looked back down at the images for NEC, at the images of horribly sick, tiny babies, he couldn't help but think that Izashi Midoriya just sounded desperate. Ring, 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 ring. Hello, this is Inko Midoriya. I'm sorry I missed your call. Please leave a message and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Beep. A heavy sigh. I don't know what more I could have done, Inko. I really don't. Call ended. Izashi was pacing. Izuku's little sunshine hat was held tight in his shaking hands like an anchor. He didn't dare take Inko's blanket out of the incubator. It needed to be nice and warm for when Izuku came back. Izuku should be back by now, right? He knew the surgery would take a while, and that every surgery, especially in tiny babies, went differently, but that disastrous meeting had lasted 2 hours. He'd been pacing for 2 more. He should be back by now, right? Footsteps. By the door. Izashi stopped pacing, his head shooting up to stare at the open door, his heart in his throat, his fingers stilled over the smiling sun embroidered on the hat. The footsteps continued. Someone appeared, then walked past the door. The footsteps faded away. Izashi started pacing again, running a hand through his hair as he forced his lungs to breathe properly. He'd kept the door open so that he would know as soon as possible once someone came to give him an update on Izuku's condition. He was wondering if that was a mistake at this point. The anxiety and anticipation were overwhelming. He hadn't eaten anything in days, but he still felt sick. Maybe he should just go and ask. Stop being a coward and ask if his son was still alive. Izashi took 1 step closer to the door, swallowed the bile crawling up his throat, and went back to pacing. Never mind. Waiting was better. He didn't want to distract the surgeons. They would have to be interrupted if he asked for an update, right? No, that wouldn't do. That might. He might. Izuku might. No, it was fine. Izuku was fine. He had to be fine. He ran a hand through his hair again and snarled as his shaking fingers caught on a tangle and ripped it out. He rubbed his face, feeling his heart pound in his chest. He stopped pacing. He stared at the hat. The hat stared back. A cute smile on the son's face. Not as cute as Izuku. He checked his phone. It's been 3 hours now. 3 hours since he left the meeting. 5 hours since Izuku was rushed away. Izuku should definitely be back by now. Something had to have gone wrong. Sanagi-san said to be prepared for the worst. Izashi staggered over to his chair, next to the cursed, empty, dead incubator. He collapsed into it, pressing the tiny hat to his face. He hunched over, trying to force himself to breathe and failing continually. He should have known. He should have known. He knew. He knew. He knew. Izuku had to be dead. The surgery had to have gone wrong, and he had to have died, and his baby had to be gone. Otherwise they would have come by now, right? The lateness had to be because they were figuring out how to get rid of him, clear this room for some tiny baby that would actually live, some parents that actually knew what they were doing. Izuku had to be dead, just like Yoichi, just like Inko, but somehow so much worse. He gasped into the tiny hat, his eyes stinging, his chest aching, not because he wasn't breathing right, because of something else. He would never be able to hold him more than once. He would never be able to hear him speak more than his little sounds. He would never be able to take him outside, see him smile, see him play, hear him laugh. It wouldn't even be difficult for them to cart him off to Tartarus. The second Izuku's death was confirmed, he would fall to pieces, and they could just sweep him up and dump him in Tartarus and wait for him to die. It wouldn't take long. Nothing would matter anymore. Nothing mattered without Izuku. Nothing fucking mattered. The door creaked. Izashi froze. "Midoriya-san," Anda said. Izashi pulled the hat away from his face, crumpling it between his hands, his vision blurred as he stared at the floor. Here it comes, here it comes. His son was dead. He knew he was dead. He was so far from ready he would never be ready to hear that his baby is gone, gone. Izuku's in recovery. He's stabilizing right now, but he'll be back soon. Gone? Izashi blinked. His hands went limp. His entire body felt numb. Wait. What? Izuku wasn't. Izuku was. He was. He's coming back, Hisashi asked, his voice cracking. Footsteps. Anda's face appeared in front of him. She smiled gently. He's coming back, Hisashi asked again, hot tears beginning to roll down his cheeks. He is, Midoriya-san. Your kiddo is a real trooper. I told you he had a spark, didn't I? Anda said, patting his knee. Hisashi's mouth opened and closed mutely. He stared at her uncomprehendingly. He made a noise he didn't know he was capable of making. Hey, come here, big guy, Anda said, pulling him into a hug. Her arms were warm and kind and sturdy. Like Hisashi fell apart. Ring, 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 ring. Hello, this is Inko Midoriya. I'm sorry I missed your call. Please leave a message and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Beep. Sniffling. Hello, Inko. How are... A soft chuckle. More sniffling. Sorry, I suppose there's no point in asking that. I'm, just a bit of a mess right now. Shuffling. The faint sound of monitors beeping. Izuku just got back from surgery. He's doing as well as he can be. The procedure actually went better than they thought it would, I'm told. The surgeon thought they were going to have to put in an ostomy, but Izuku narrowly avoided that. He's a strong boy, Inko. A watery laugh, more shuffling. The beeping faded. A blown nose. These tissues are awful. You would hate them, Inko, but, anyway, I'm very glad Izuku managed to avoid the ostomy. Those come with a host of issues, I've read. He'll still face some issues, I'm sure. The recovery for this condition is not a short one. It's a scary thought, Inko. He's already been through so much. Oh, hello, Aoi. Shuffling, distant, muffled voices, one deep, one higher pitched, the sound of the phone getting picked up again. I'm sorry, Inko. I have to go. Reiki-san is coming in to take a look at Izuku, and I don't want to be distracted. Sniffling. Keep watching over him, okay? And say hello to Yoichi for me. Call ended. All right, listeners, this concludes day 40 of All For You. This was a tough section for me when I first read the fic. I was struggling so hard with thinking that Izuku wasn't going to make it. Let me know your all's thoughts and reactions to everything so far. Up next will be day 46, and as always, thank you all so much for listening.